Hey everybody, Reed Price here. I play the role of Rob Shandon on Sullivan's Crossing, and you're listening to Corman Productions' Deep Dive TV Podcast with Dave and Stacie.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions. My co-host Stacie here to talk about Sullivan's Crossing, Season 2, Episode 4, titled Eye of the Storm. The episode's description reads as follows. Things start to heat up between Maggie and Cal when they're forced to take shelter at Cal's cabin. The episode is directed by Cal Coons and written by Shelley Scarro. All right, shout-outs. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give me a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow. Feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corman Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right.
Okay, well, before you do go to shout-outs, I do want to say that description you had was a very short and weird one. Yeah? Where did that come from?
I am not really sure.
Well, I'm going to hand you this one so you can read this as well. This is the official description from CTV, who makes the show.
Gotcha. Okay. I think my episode description was from Internet Movie Database. So
somebody just wrote that.
All right. So the CW episode description reads as follows. Maggie and Cal continue to fight their attraction as they are forced to wait out the storm alone at Cal's cabin. Sydney tells Rob the real reason she quit working at the diner, and Rob admits why he's having trouble with Finn. Maggie witnesses a new side to Cal when they help a camper in distress. Sully gets good news about his diagnosis after he and Frank return to the crossing. Sully attempts to tell Lola the truth about her accident. Sydney has a momentary lapse of judgment that complicates things with Raph, and Frank is finally able to help Sully remember the important things he's forgotten. Whew, that is a mouthful. All right, so shout outs this week. Skylar Anderson, he said that he appreciated what I said regarding his question, and that was about, of course, would this series be better off if we focused on less characters? Also, the transition from television, having 22 episodes a season, to 10 to 12, which just gives writers less room to go in depth about every character. That is very true. For the record, he says he loves Rob and Sydney, and he likes that Sully finally shared the truth with someone this week. Sharon Greenman on Facebook made a comment about either one of us actually having watched Virgin River. I'm pretty sure that you did.
I didn't, actually.
You didn't? Okay.
No. I've seen, scenes from it.
Yeah.
When someone else that was in my house was watching it, but I never actually watched the series, no.
All right, so she was basically saying that was a very twisty series, and that perhaps what they're saying about Sully having hit Lola is not actually what happened, and we're eventually going to reveal otherwise. You can't do that.
Yeah, I don't see that working.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen the scene multiple times. Yeah. We've watched it.
I don't necessarily love how they're treating that plot line for the most part. I do love the Sully side of it.
I feel like we're finally getting out of the bad of it, and maybe we're going to be able to move on, I hope.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I like the Sully part of that equation. The Lola side has been clumsily handled. But nevertheless, you have to follow through on this. You can't do an about face without... You just can't do that. So I'm hoping that she's wrong about the possibility that they're going to reveal eventually that Sully did not, in fact, cause the accident or whatever. But we'll get back to that conversation in a little while. But yeah, anyway, your thoughts in this week's episode?
I feel like your concern about it being half an episode was half warranted. I feel like they did better than the season 1 episodes that you were referencing.
I agree.
But it still felt like we stopped halfway through and started a new episode.
Yeah. So here's the thing. They had a really good setup. They had characters, in a room together where they were forced to talk. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good, smart setup. I wish they had done that for the entire episode.
Yeah. Once we it's morning. And we're not dealing with any storm damage. We just kind of move on to the next day. And that was a little weird.
The reason it's better than the prior episode that I mentioned from last season and it's still a little shaky, but at least they were continuing the same stories as opposed to that last episode, which went on to a totally brand new thread.
Right, it completely changed.
Yeah.
But I did feel like, so I mean, I watched it once. The second time I'm watching it, taking my notes, and we get to like the morning. And in my brain, I'm like, oh, we're at the end of the episode. And I hit pause, and I'm like, oh, we're only halfway.
Yeah,
and then
basically.
I'm like, oh, yeah. We still have all this other stuff to cover that I totally forgot exists.
Right.
Because I feel like we just finished a story.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So it's better, but still has that problem where I feel like they want to tell these 2-part stories, but they don't know how to execute it.
Right, yes.
Into making it a full 2-part story.
So, yeah, I mean, if they had stuck to their guns and just had them talking in rooms while the storm plays out for the entire episode, I think this would have been a great episode.
Right, if we would have done the morning after for the last 5 minutes, that would have been great. Mm-hmm. But we just moved forward.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's over.
Yeah.
Even though, like, the title of the episode is Eye of the Storm. Last episode was more about the storm than this episode was.
Yes. For those who don't know, Eye of the Storm is, the middle of the storm where there's nothing going on, and then you experience more storm.
Right.
That's not what happens here. The storm is just over. So the episode should be titled, The Storm is Over.
Yeah.
Or something
End
along
of the
those lines.
storm.
Yeah. All right. So
Aftermath.
Right. Yes.
I think that was the episode title, though, last season, wasn't it?
I think so.
So they couldn't have done that again.
Right.
And then the baby thing.
Yeah.
I have a lot of negative things to say about that when we get there.
Okay,
I'll save it for then. No.
Okay.
It didn't hit for me.
Do we have anything else to say before diving in?
Let's just go to it.
Okay. So, we begin in the woods with Cal looking for Maggie, who was hit by a tree. Cal finds her unconscious on the ground and gets her out of the storm.
With Molly. Molly the dog is there.
And we have her credits. It's a very quick, cold open.
Yes.
And then we move on. When we come back, Sully is telling Frank what happened in the aftermath. That's funny. Sully knew the cops, and they wrote it off as a hit and run. But he held on to that guilt for all those years. Okay, so first of all, let's play a little game, and not in the Saw kind of way.
Okay.
I, as your friend, tell you that 20 years ago, I hit a little girl, and I didn't drive off, but I told the police that they went that way, and basically held on to the fact that I was the one that hit that little girl for those 20 years. How do you react to that?
Well, first I'm going to say it hasn't been 20 years. She's not that old.
Okay.
It's been more like 10.
Fair enough.
But, well, so Frank's reaction was kind of like, no, you didn't. You're confused.
Right. Okay. So he was denying it. Yes.
And that was weird. Mm-hmm. Like, he's confessing something to you.
Right.
And your response is just to be like, nah, you have dementia. It's okay.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So that was weird. But yeah, I don't know. How should he have responded?
See, I pondered that question. I have no idea how I would react to that, but I'm pretty sure it's not as Frank does here. I don't think I would have been this calm about it.
Yeah. Well, remember one thing is they went into this conversation because of the fact that Sully had just, thrown alcohol on the floor. So he's in sponsor mode right now.
Gotcha.
So that's where Frank is at right now, is he's trying to be supportive in that regard. And trying to help with the alcoholism.
So do you think that Frank is going to have a different reaction when he's actually allowed to get out of that mode and have a chance to process this a little bit more?
I think his whole thing throughout this episode is, well, you better tell her. You better come clean. He's not willing to just, like,
let him off
secret,
the hook.
Yeah,
I got you.
But in this moment, again, I think it was more about, I need to make sure Sully's okay.
All right, so I'm not sure that we were aware that Sully didn't just drive off.
Right, we were under the impression that it was a hit and run.
Right,
that he left the scene.
Right.
But now we're told that on record, he's the one who found her. So the record is that somebody hit her, Sully found her and called the cops.
Right.
So,
which in fact is a lie.
He did call the cops.
Yes.
Which is good.
Yes.
But the way he's making it sound is they just kind of assumed he didn't do it, not necessarily that he said he didn't do it.
Right.
And he just let them think that.
Uh-huh.
Which isn't as bad, I guess, as hit and run.
Right, correct. So it
and then he says he went to rehab, and when he came back, they had already declared a hit and run.
Right.
So it's almost like he's trying to say, well, I meant to admit what I did, but it was too late.
Right. So, I mean, it definitely makes it better that he didn't leave her there. That
Right.
he actually called the cops.
He actually got help.
And his only crime is not admitting that he was the one that actually did it.
Right.
Which is still bad enough. I kind of tried to look into what the laws were if you get into an accident, a DUI situation where you cause an injury to somebody. There's no definitive answer to that question. I couldn't find one. All the law, it's basically state law. All the state laws are different.
Right.
But not only that, but this is Nova Scotia, so it'd be even much more different.
Right.
My guess is he would probably face some time. How much? How much? I don't know.
But probably less so than
Yes.
the hit and run.
Yes, exactly.
If he had come clean.
Right, exactly.
Now, the fact that he didn't confess does that make it the same thing as a hit and run? He didn't physically run, but he still didn't pay the consequences.
He didn't take responsibility
Right.
for his actions. Right. And
Either way, though, it happened so long ago. This is really, I think, a private matter between him and Lola. I don't think there's any legal ramifications at this point.
Well, I mean, I think it also goes to Sully's reputation within this community. So I think that's an important factor. And I think he's going to get raked over the coals for the rest of the season based on how this episode ends.
Yeah,
But,
he's already not in a great place.
Yeah,
before
yeah.
most people know about the Lola
Right,
thing.
So moving along from that. Frank says he could have been there for him, that guilt is like a poison. And then we cut away. Maggie regains consciousness he's in Chad Michael Murray's house, not Chad Michael Murray's house.
Maggie is in Cal's cabin.
Maggie is in Cal's cabin. Yes.
Which, I find it funny because remember Cal moved out of the cabin
Yeah.
for like 5 minutes and Lulu cleaned it, like they were re-renting it, and then he moved back. It sure looks like he's awful moved in. Like the thing's completely full of like all of his belongings again.
Yeah.
He lives there. He's not renting it for the week. It's very bizarre to me, that whole timeline.
Raph tells him via radio to keep her up and talking. And Maggie tells Raph about Pete, or Rafe rather, and he basically says that he will find Pete and it'll be all good.
Yeah, and also to let him know that they have Molly. She's safe. He doesn't need to worry about Molly.
Maggie thanks Cal for coming after her, and then we cut to Finn and Sydney. Sydney says that she hates storms too. Rob has now finished with the propane tank. Sydney and Rob...
so he gets the lights back on.
Yes.
So that's helpful.
That's a good deal. Sydney and Rob reminisce about how, as a big brother, he kept her safe during the storms. And then Finn asks how come she had to take care of him when his mom died.
Right.
And that's a giant ouchie.
The right answer to this question would have been that family takes care of each other.
Right.
Right? But instead, they take this to heart, and it's going to end up that Rob feels guilty that, Sydney had to take care of him.
Yes.
And that shouldn't be the case.
No.
Maybe feel guilty you weren't there for her, for whatever her situation was with her manager or whatever, but the fact that she had to take care of you when your wife died is not something you should feel guilty about.
Right.
You should be taking care of each other.
Yeah,
That's kind of the point.
Yes.
Just because you're older doesn't mean you're the one who has to be responsible all the time.
Right. Exactly.
And, I don't think the message they're giving to Finn here is necessarily the right message.
Cal and Maggie. Cal takes her pants off to dry. Okay. It's not
Just the way you said that.
It's not exactly how it...
He didn't take her pants off.
No.
He gave her a shirt to wear,
yes.
one of his shirts. And my note is just like, I guess he didn't have any pants to loan her, because she's just hanging out in one of his shirts all episode.
Yeah, sure thing, Cal. You have no
It's
pants
like,
to
it's
loan
really
her.
cold. Come sit by the fire. How about putting something on your legs?
Right, yes. So she ends up comforting Pete's dog and tells Cal about Pete's episode. Cal ends up talking about his brother, and Cal gets Maggie a first aid kit to take care of a cut that is on her leg, and Cal actually ends up helping her out. Rafe calls again. He found Pete and is back at the outpost. And of course, Pete is now informed that the dog is with...
Yeah, and I like this transition. We started with Cal and Maggie. We on the radio, and then we flipped to the outpost scene.
Right.
And it was a very beautiful transition that we just flipped over the other side of the phone call. I liked how they did that.
That is pretty nice.
And I like that we have so many characters just in the outpost too, and we didn't like split everybody up because that would have been weird if because you know what I felt weird is like, oh, Lola's at her house with this couple, and that's just weird because there's Lola sitting there.
Yeah, yep. And so at the store, Rafe fills them all in about everyone, and then they learn that they spotted Frank's truck, which everybody seems to take as good news, but is it really good news? Because you haven't spotted Frank or Sully.
It's a lead, right? They had no idea where they are. Now there's a lead.
But everybody acts relieved like they had found Frank and Sully, which is not actually the case.
Yeah, and it's 2 hours away where they spotted his truck, so... Their hands are kind of tied, really. It's in the hands of the local people where that is.
So Rafe is told by Connie to return and help her. Sydney says she doesn't want him to go back out there, and he says he has to because it's his job, ma'am.
I mean, yeah.
Yep. And she gives him a little kiss for good luck. Mixed signals much, Sydney? Anyway, at Lola's, Ellis thinks she's experiencing Braxton Hicks, which if you're not familiar with that, is basically false pregnancy.
False labor.
False labor is what I meant to say.
Big difference.
Yes.
She's definitely pregnant.
Right, which is more than we can say for the other pregnancy that we're dealing with in another show that we're talking about. But yeah. So I've heard of this before. I don't think Trish experienced it, but I think I remember my friend Jill, who has since passed away, talking about her experiencing this condition. And Maggie and Cal play some games. Which is chess.
They take chess specifically, and is that Roy's chess set? Remember, he had a chess set.
It might be actually.
I think he gave it to Cal.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. And this is to keep her awake, basically.
Yeah, to keep her awake because she might have a concussion, so she's not allowed to go to sleep. And she doesn't want to play, but he convinces her, like, this will be a good distraction, and I got to keep you awake. And you know what they do? They drink tea.
Oh, yes. He offers her some tea. I did really do that.
We got an awful lot of tea in our podcast.
Yes, we do.
Between,
drinking it and, Mrs. Lou.
Between From and Mrs. Lou and a teacup.
Yep.
All these things we talk about. Tea is that should be our byline. Something about tea.
In fact, we see somebody drinking tea in teacup in the final 2 episodes that we're going to talk about.
Yes.
We're not doing that for too far away from this episode.
But it'll be another week or so.
That's true
for anybody listening.
Right. Yes.
So don't talk about them because they haven't happened yet.
Oh yeah. That's a spoiler. Okay. So Finn asks about Pete. Rob says he might be afraid of the storm too. Finn and Rob go and talk to him, and of course Pete reveals that he's served, and then Rob himself has not served, but he had friends that did. Finn continues to ask him personal questions until Rob tells him, okay, that's enough, kid. And I felt that was a really realistic moment because kids are very much like that.
Yeah.
And I found myself saying to Julia, okay, that's enough. Stop. Right. But, he says he tried to reconnect with his daughter, but he guess he didn't do a very good job. And once again, this is another thing that Rob takes to heart.
That's exactly my note. Rob takes this to heart.
Aw. Okay.
Love when we're on the same page.
I know, literally. So Cal and Maggie play chess. She beats him multiple times. She got good playing the game because it was the only game that Walter would play with her, which is very, very sad.
Yeah, because he wanted to teach her how to have control.
Yep.
Because that is the key to happiness, which Cal is very confused by that.
We've literally heard Walter say that to her.
Yes.
And Walter, so Cal disputes that, saying that life is all about taking chances. And then we have Rob and Sydney talking. He says that what Finn said about them bothered him. He said he wasn't there for her when she came back from New York. She points out that he had just lost his wife. So, of course, he was not going to be in the proper headspace to really take care of her in that moment.
Right.
Sydney admits to leaving because Finn called her mom. She felt the two of them failing to connect was because of her, which is something that she actually did say in the finale. So when she said that to Rafe, I believe, that was actually her true opinion on the matter and why she left.
Right.
I still think there's more to it than that, but that's what she seemed to think at least. So Rob says that she isn't the reason they aren't connecting, and he admits that that Finn looks very much like Sarah.
Yeah.
So he's having trouble because every time he looks at Finn, he's seeing his wife.
Right.
Which is...
And then he kind of breaks down a little bit.
Yeah.
And you know what? Rob made me tear up a little bit in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
We had a good moment from
Yes.
a good moment from Rob.
By the way, very good job, these two acting together in this scene. Very good job from Lindor and Reed Price.
Yes.
In this scene. I kind of wish we had gotten more of this, but it's still pretty good, what we did get. Frank and Sully in the morning. The storm is clear.
Yeah, they're in the fishing hut, which surprisingly did super okay in this hurricane that happened, 2 feet away from it. Mm-hmm. There should have been more fear and damage and danger in this hut.
Yes.
We should see some damage.
Right. Maybe some windows broken. So Sully contemplates telling Lola the truth but worries about how she'll react. My guess is it will not be very good. Frank says he has to find a way so that they can both heal. A rescue worker ends up knocking. I don't believe we've seen this guy before.
Yeah, he's credited as volunteer. He's played by Kyle Gillis. Kyle's in 2 episodes of The Trades, and he's in the movie Creepy Crawling, which came up last week as well, but I don't remember why.
Gotcha.
So it came up in this series last week, though.
Oh, cool. So he says that a lot of people are going to be relieved that they found them. Frank gets his truck boosted, and Frank tells Sully that it's time to stop running from his problems. Maggie ends up beating Cal again.
Apparently she's been beating him all night long because it's morning now.
Yep.
How many games of chess did you play? I think you maybe should have moved on to another game. This sounds really boring playing chess for like 8 hours.
So he talks about becoming a lawyer. He isn't sure what he's going to do now, but he wants to help people. He found that, being a defense attorney in a big office is very impersonal. And she asks if it bothers him not having a plan. He says he used to believe that it was necessary, but life sometimes shows you what the next move is if you're open to hearing it.
Yeah.
And then they end up kissing.
And you know what? This whole, I still want to make a differance in people's lives. Search and rescue.
That was my thought. I knew that was coming.
That has to be where this is going.
Rafe, meanwhile, cockblocks the couple by calling Kanye has given all clear and tells him that Frank and Sully have been found and Pete has gone back to his trailer. So Cal and Maggie end up splitting up, but not before Cal gives her back her pants that have now dried. I think she was about to leave without them, which would have been a little bit embarrassing.
She's going to go to the outpost to wait for Sully, and Cal is going to go bring Molly back to Pete.
At Lola's, Ella's situation turns out to be more than Braxton Hicks as she ends up having her water break.
Yeah.
And Lola's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah. And
this is so inconvenient
every scene from last episode through this episode, of Lola with this couple in the house, every single time we look at Lola's face, she just looks more and more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And regretting this good deed that she did, inviting them to stay with her.
Right. I thought for sure we were going to go with something that I think you joked about last week, and that Lola was going to have to deliver the baby.
Yeah, but I was joking when I said she's going to have a baby, but here we are.
All right, so question. You are a pregnant couple, and you're this close to having a baby.
Well, apparently she's early.
Okay.
They did say that it's too early. She's not supposed to be in labor
Gotcha.
yet. So they weren't actually expecting her to go into labor.
Okay.
And in this scene, the meteorologist on the radio says the storm is over, but a lot of roads are still closed. And that meteorologist is played by Kevin Garrier. Pretty typical Nova Scotian credits. He's in an episode of Digstown and an episode of Haven.
Which, by the way, I've seen a couple episodes of now.
Yes, you mentioned that.
Yep. Not on air, though.
You mentioned it last week, I'm pretty sure.
Did I?
I thought so. I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, Haven, it seems like a lower key kind of spin on the X-Files. It's not quite the X-Files, but it covers similar paranormal ground. At least it seems like that for the first 3 episodes.
Well, now if you're watching it, you have to look for all of our Nova Scotian friends, because I know a lot of them pop up.
I have seen a few, including Genevieve Steele, who's come up recently on our podcast. I think it was in relation to From. Yes, she was in a couple episodes of From this season so far. But yes, so Cal returns Pete's dog. The two of them talk, and he tries to talk to him about getting help and patching things up with his family. But Pete doesn't think so. He thinks that not every story has a happy ending.
Yeah, he's not interested in getting treatment for his PTSD, and he says he's going to be heading out soon.
So is this the last we're going to see of Pete?
It might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So his deal was just to, convince other people to get their lives together, and he's not actually going to get his life together.
Nice. So Maggie and Sydney, Rob ends up taking Finn to spend time with him, and I think they're going back to the restaurant.
Yeah, he said he's going to take Finn home, and he's got to check on the diner, and Sydney offers to help. She's like, oh, I'll take him.
Right.
And Rob's like, no, I'm going to spend time with him, and this is supposed to be our moment to be like, yay, he's finally, being a good dad. But it felt a little weak to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking my kid. Aren't you proud of me?
Yeah, Sydney thinks that the two of them are in a good place, and she ends up asking Maggie about Cal. Maggie claims that they just played chess all night, and Sydney doesn't buy it. And by the way, Lindora is very adorbs here, basically saying that she does not believe that that's all that happened.
Yeah, she's like, okay, you can tell me later.
Right, and by the way, she is correct. That is not all that happened.
It's mostly what happened.
It is mostly.
I mean, there was 8 hours of chess playing.
Yeah. And 2 seconds of kissing before, rape called to ruin it all.
Maybe they should have, got to that a little earlier.
Yeah. So Maggie and Edna end up talking, and Cal ends up stopping by. He reveals that Pete has decided to leave. She was really hoping that he would get help for his PTSD, but apparently that's not going to be the case. Lola drives up with Ellis, and of course Ellis is having a baby, and Maggie has to deliver the baby.
So Ellis is in labor. The roads to the hospital are closed, so Lola brought her here, which was the right thing to do. They all congratulate Lola for doing something right. Because, she needs that encouragement that, it was a good thing to bring her to a doctor.
Yes.
So Maggie takes over, and Edna radios Connie saying she'll send a team.
Mm-hmm.
And John, the husband, he asked Maggie, he's like, have you done this before? She's like, I did it in med school.
Right.
It can't be that hard, right?
Yeah.
And Lola and Edna go wait outside, so they're not interested in being helpful. But
I mean, it's what I would have done, but yeah.
Everything that happens next, this whole scene, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the way it plays out. Even though we've already confirmed, this is not something Maggie has a lot of experience in, and we're in the middle of a store that we just happen to have a cot sitting here because we waited out the storm here, so that was a little weird anyways. It becomes a 3-second delivery.
Yes.
With complications.
Yes.
And it still took 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how this works.
No.
That's not at all how this works.
The mother of my child's pregnancy, my ex-wife, her pregnancy was relatively smooth, and it still went on for 8 hours.
Delivery.
What did I just say?
You keep mixing up pregnancy and delivery.
Yes.
Labor.
Yes.
Very different things.
Her pregnancy was longer than 8 hours. Her delivery was about 8 hours.
that only happens on the beach of Old.
Yeah.
You saw that movie?
Yeah. Actually, yes, I did.
So, we have a complication. The umbilical cord's wrapped around the neck. And this should be a problem. This is a big deal.
Yes.
In a hospital, that's a big deal.
Right.
It takes a whole team of people to fix it. And Maggie's just like, it's okay. We just have to breathe. And again, 3 seconds. And oh, look, all better.
Yeah.
This scene was just done so weirdly.
Uh-huh.
It needed to show a passage of time that this was taking longer. We should have had a cut to some other characters and come back to them to make it look like this isn't happening over 3 seconds.
Or better yet, don't do this in this episode.
Well, right. But if they're going to do it, if you're going to do this, you didn't need this at all. Why are we doing this? I mean, I know why we're doing this because, Maggie's thinking about baby. But it's just so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's literally, it's oh yeah, look. There it is. I delivered your baby.
Yay.
That was so hard because it was, scary situation, but I fixed it in 3 seconds. And she's like, Cal, I need your help because of the umbilical cord. And she's like, I need you to wrap the baby in a blanket. That's what he needed to do to help.
Aww.
No, that's not what you needed help with. You needed more hands in the delivery itself because you're trying to take the cord off of its neck.
Right.
And then, we get a 6-month baby. I mean, that's what happens in TV because babies have to be a certain size before they're allowed to be on film.
Right.
So it's not going to be a newborn. So that's always a problem whenever you see a newborn baby, right? As you can tell it's 6 months old. But it's covered in baby powder. That's what they covered this baby in. Instead of anything wet and chunky.
Like blood, like
Yeah.
how a baby looks when it comes out.
Right. It was just covered in baby powder. Like, why? Let's not have a close-up on the baby.
Right.
You know, we don't need to see a close-up of the baby if you're not going to make it look like a newborn baby. And then, even though we just dealt with the umbilical cord being around the neck, like this was the plot point of this scene, we skipped the part that, you know, the umbilical cord is supposed to be hooked to the baby.
Right.
And there's an afterbirth. Like, they pick the baby up and hand it to her.
Yes, without cutting the cord.
In half a second from the time it was born. The baby's clean. There's no umbilical cord. There's no afterbirth. And...
So what you're telling me is that don't expect a documentary when we're watching this scene.
It was like, why are we seeing this all in such close-up when they're making it so ridiculously unbelievable?
Right.
This scene would have done much better if we were, you know, let's watch Cal's expression while we don't see what's happening.
Right.
Or so many things they could have done differently to make this look like an ounce of plausibility here.
Right, yeah.
But the whole thing was just like, this is taking me out of everything because this is worse than a soap opera.
Right.
This is little kids playing with a doll is what's happening right now.
Okay. I think little kids with dolls might have been better, actually.
Did you agree with me? Like, did you see this, this when you were watching it, or is it just me?
I was not watching it that closely because I was just like, do we have to do this? I was already not thrilled that we were like doing this in this episode. So I was just kind of like not really caring about what I was seeing on screen. But I'm pretty sure that you're absolutely right in everything that you described. But I was just not watching it that closely. I was like actively like, okay, how long is this going to go on for? But it takes away time that could be used elsewhere. It could have been used expanding, you know, Sydney and Rob's scenes, which were good as they were, but they could have used expanding on. We could have had more Sully and Frank, which is really the story that interests me the most. Because, you know, Scott Patterson is, as I've said before, probably one of the most natural performers on this series. He's the best one. And, you know, Chad Michael Murray's good too. They're all good, but I think Scott Patterson is the best actor of them all. So I think we should have spent more time with that, or Rob and Sydney, or this and that. Like, it seems like this doesn't have to happen here in the first place. And and to also then do it poorly is not a good look.
They did it really poorly, and I feel like I understand why they wanted to include this, like where it put her mindset for where we're moving forward. But
there's other ways to do that.
There were other ways to do it, and we didn't need to see the scene. We could have cut to something else and then came back and learned that she did it. And it's good.
Yes.
Like, not show it to us in a really, really weird, poorly done way.
All right. So, moving along, because I think we spent enough time with that one. Maggie has surveyed Sullivan's Crossing for damage. When Frank and Sully arrive back, Frank offers a quiet apology in his native tongue. I forgot what tribe he belongs to.
Oh, I don't know.
But Edna asks him what he was thinking, and he apologizes for it.
Yeah, it was this really great moment between Edna and Frank. Like, she scolds him, but only in, like, half a sentence, because most of it was not verbal.
Right.
And then he apologizes just as easily.
Because he knows he's wrong.
He knows he's wrong. Like, they had this whole fight and makeup in half a second. And it was beautiful. It was very, like, realistic. Like, yes, this is a couple that's been together for decades, and they don't even have to have a conversation to have a conversation.
Right.
They just, the way they look at each other, and, like, one or two words, and they did the whole thing. And they did such a great job executing that. Unlike the baby thing.
Sydney admits in finding rape in his element was sexy.
Oh, wait, but just 1 second. I don't know if you said this.
Yeah. Actually, I skipped over that.
The important part.
Yeah, Maggie ends up telling Sully that he does not have Alzheimer's.
He doesn't have Alzheimer's, and they hug, and he's happy.
Yay.
Okay, now move forward.
Okay. So, Sydney admits to finding rape in his element sexy, and then one thing leads to another, and you can guess what happens from there. They play chess.
They did not play chess. No, she offered to help him with his shower. You remember he had made that offer to her before, and she turned him down. And so she's making some moves on Rafe, and I was happy for her.
It's really funny.
I was like, thank you, because this is what you want. So, like, go for it.
Yeah, but okay, so we'll get that.
Yeah, and then she even in the description they say she, like, messed up. Well, no.
She immediately goes to Maggie, like, 2 seconds later, like, wow, I just majorly screwed up. But So, all right, but before that, Sully and Maggie talk. She reveals how he knows about the drinking.
Yeah, so she's giving him the treatment. Remember, he needed this treatment right away to deal with the vitamin deficiency thing that's breaking his brain.
And then she says that she never looked at things from his perspective, and he comes back with, "Why would you? You were just a kid," which is a perfectly reasonable point that I made last week.
Right. He takes the responsibility off of her.
Right.
Like, well, no, you weren't here, but it wasn't your fault.
Right. She realizes that he never stopped caring and asks if they can start over, and he says he would love that. They end up saying, I love you to each other, and then they end up embracing. Really great scene between the two of them. And like I said, that's one of the stronger elements of the series, is dealing with that relationship. Sydney ends up talking to Maggie. This is 2 seconds after.
Yeah, so she called Maggie saying she had an emergency, I guess.
Probably right after they finished post-coital.
And Sydney's like, or Maggie's like, what's the emergency?
Yeah.
And she's like, I screwed up. I slept with Rafe.
And and it's basically because she's going to be doing the whole modeling agency.
She said
thing.
It wouldn't be a problem, except I already asked to sign back onto my old agency. Okay, but you didn't actually sign anything.
Sure.
So you still can change your mind if you realize that's not what you want to do.
Right. And at the same time, there's no reason why you couldn't still do that and have some type of relationship with Ray.
Well, the thing is, that's in New York.
Okay,
in
fair
a different
enough.
country.
Oh, well, yeah, all right. That's true. Good point.
And I don't think Sydney has the magic airplane ticket that, Andrew does.
Yes,
and can
probably
just fly
not.
back and forth 6 times a day.
Nope, probably not.
But she might be able to find Faraway Tree. I think she needs to ask her brother to help her with that.
Yeah. He would know.
That's the thing
Definitely.
right there.
So Maggie ends up admitting to kissing Cal, but says it was a mistake. Sydney says, "Yeah, but was it really?" And she suggests,
and there it is.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. She's saying what she's doing with Rafe is a mistake.
Right. Yes.
But is it? Because that's what you really want.
Yes.
It's the same advice she's giving Maggie that she needs to take herself. Mm-hmm. Is you need to really figure out what you want, because I don't think you know.
Right. And then Sydney suggests giving Cal a chance about the baby, that he might be okay with that situation. And I agree. Unfortunately, that does not actually happen within this episode. Sully calls Lola, invites her over for dinner with the intention of revealing the truth. Maggie, meanwhile, goes to Cal and makes a date with him. Now, I'm not sure if I should say this now or later, but she makes a huge mistake here. She in the sense that this is not how to go about this. I think she needs to have an honest conversation with Cal, because they already know they have feelings for each other. What do they need to go on a date for? What they need to know...
Well, they've never been on a date.
I mean, all right, fair enough.
Before you say, do you want to be with me even though I'm having another man's baby, maybe we should try the, do we want to be together at all, starting point somewhere.
Okay, so...
They've never actually been on a date.
Okay, so I'll move past that. But it's still relevant. I still think that she should be, letting him in and actually giving him a real chance, as opposed to what she actually does. But we'll get to that in a moment. So, Sully and Lola have dinner.
And he looks very happy, by the way.
Yes, he does.
The fact that they're actually going on an official date.
He does. Lola and Sully have dinner. He tries to confess. She notices that he hasn't eaten. She knows there's a problem.
Right.
She is so self-absorbed.
He's about to tell her.
Right.
He really is.
Yes. She is so self-absorbed. She doesn't have the ability to read the room, even though she knows that Sully has a problem. That she just starts crying and talking about her own problem, being afraid that Sully was going to go missing from her life.
Right. She basically says, "You're the only family I've left, and I don't think I could go on if something happened to you."
Right.
Which tells him, "Oh, it's probably not a good time for me to destroy my relationship with you." While you're crying that you don't want to lose me.
So I can't really blame him for not telling her in this moment.
Right. And you know what I really think needs to happen is he needs Frank's support.
Yeah.
Maybe don't be alone with her when you tell her.
Maybe
have him, not necessarily in the conversation, but nearby.
Yeah. I got you.
Somebody who knows and is there and can maybe help diffuse if things go really badly.
Like if she decides to start stabbing him or something.
And you know what my note was right before this scene is, we're going through all these people, and again, this is the part of the story where it's the next day and we've kind of moved on from the storm. Why are none of these people sleeping? Every single one of them stayed up all night long for the storm, And then you know what they did? They went on to have all these events.
Right.
Where they're just like going about their day. Cal's chopping wood. And, Maggie delivers a baby. And all this stuff's happening. Nobody has taken a nap, gone to sleep at all. They've just been awake for 2 days. And they're like, yeah, let's go on a date. Let's make dinner. Let's have all these plans like it's a normal day.
Because this can't wait another day. But anyway, Maggie and Cal's date seems to go well. They end up dancing. But then she asks him about kids. And he doesn't think that kids are in the cards for him. Now, here's the thing. You don't want him to elaborate on what he means by that?
We're going to get there, I'm sure. But
yeah.
She got scared in this moment. So, yeah, they're at the restaurant. And he doesn't fit in here, by the way. We have this whole, scene about how he doesn't know how to crack the lobster. She's trying to bring him into her fancy pants environment, and this isn't it for him.
Right.
But yeah, we called all the way back to the land blessing, which was the day Frank got shot, I think, right? So way back, the middle of season 1, they were supposed to dance. They got distracted because of, Frank was missing or then somebody was kidnapped, this whole thing, right?
Yep.
And he's like, yeah, we never got our dance. And they did the whole, let's have a dance, even though there's no music and, there's no dancing here. And, I hate that trope.
Yeah.
I always find it so super weird. I think it's supposed to be romantic.
Yeah.
Because they do it so much in media, right? And
yes.
I just find it icky. If anybody ever asked me to dance in a room that has no music and nobody's dancing, I would tell them to screw off.
Okay, so I'll let Adam know not to do that, though I think by this point he should know that. But
I don't know. I just find it really weird that is a trope that's continued so much. But yeah, so they get to the conversation about the baby because, while they're... Oh, and she calls him Calypso for old time's sake. I thought that was... Because she knows his actual name now.
Right, yeah.
But she's... We're getting these, callbacks, right, to how they met and started... We're trying to start fresh. We were pretty clumsy, but now let's start. Let's start the things you need to do to start looking towards a relationship. And they kiss.
Yeah.
And they talk about the baby. So this is why, the baby delivery becomes important to the story, right? He's saying he was so impressed with what she did, and he was so impressed with how helpful... She was so impressed with how helpful he was, even though, he wasn't. They're both really impressed with each other during that 3-second delivery. And she sees this as her in. She's about to tell him that she's pregnant.
Yeah. She's
about to have that conversation with him. And she says, oh, well, so you could see yourself having kids one day, because he was just talking about his siblings, and he was basically, we've heard that story. He raised his siblings because his parents were losers. She's like, so you could see yourself having kids one day. And she's expecting him to be like, yeah. And then she's going to tell him. She would have told him, except he's like, nah.
Well, we don't know his reasoning because
he says,
he's always known for the longest time.
He said, I've decided a long time ago that it wasn't in the cards for me.
I mean, maybe he's sterile? I mean,
That's, I have that in my end notes here. I'm half expecting that to be what it turns out to be.
Right.
Is that he can't have kids.
Right.
Not that he doesn't want kids. He realizes it's not in the cards because he can't.
Yes.
Not because he never wanted to. I'm kind of thinking that's where it's going to go.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think that she should have asked some follow-up questions. But
she got scared. And she felt embarrassed because she was about to admit this to him. Yeah. And I can see... Same thing as, Frank not being able to tell Lolo and he needed to tell her. Not
Sully.
I always do that.
I know.
It's the same thing, where it's like, oh, I thought this was the moment, but maybe it's not the right moment.
Right.
Crap.
Okay. I see that. At the same time, I just kind of feel like she just gives up too quickly.
Well, yeah, she shut down because, she wasn't expecting that answer.
And that's what Maggie does when it comes down to it. But Cal clearly knows that this is an issue.
Yeah.
And wants to have the conversation. Right. But she won't let him do it.
Yeah. She's just like, no, I gotta go take care of my dad.
Right. So Frank and Sully end up talking. Sully says he tried, but it wasn't the right time. And he's right. I don't really blame him for this. Frank suggests going to a meeting. Edna shows up. And then Maggie finds him after her fancy date to give him the treatment.
And everyone wants to know what she's all dressed up for, but she completely ignores that question.
And then, before he can go, Frank says, by the way, you know that...
He's reading the newspaper.
Yeah. You know that thing that you said you forgot about? I think I know what it is. And they show him the auction for Sullivan's Crossing in the newspaper.
Yeah, big half-page ad about the auction.
And
everybody is in shock, including Sully, because he has lost all memory of this.
Right. That's nothing. So, and then basically Edna's like, well, how the hell did that happen? Yeah, like I said.
And then we cut to credits, and it felt like a really weird cut. I feel like they cut the scene short.
Probably.
I feel like CW cut something right there, because it was like almost in the middle of a sentence.
Right.
It was weird. Mm-hmm. So we at least it's finally out in the open.
Yeah, I really thought they were gonna go get the treatment and that they were not gonna get to that plot point.
Yeah,
like they need to do.
Right.
And then suddenly they just drop it on us. Like
I'm glad that somebody.
Yes.
Frank, in the case it is, realized that that's the thing he forgot and not the fact that he hit Lola, which is what he thought he forgot.
Yeah.
Because I hated that concept that that's where we were going with that's what he forgot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, obviously this is what he forgot.
Mm-hmm.
This is a much more pressing matter.
Yes, than something that happened like 10 years ago.
Right. And you know what was funny? So I paused it to read that article. And, I mean, it didn't give us much information. There weren't any dates. Like, I was looking for it to say, like, in 3 days or something, you know, because we still don't really know the timeline between last season and this season, where we had 27 days last time we got a number.
Well, I'm guessing that...
It's soon.
I'm guessing the number already passed, and that's why it's going to auction now.
Well, I thought the number of days would have been until the auction itself.
Okay, so I thought it was you have.
I mean, I don't know anything about like property foreclosures, but storage units go up for auction. I'm familiar with that world, and the way that works is you have until the minute the auction happens to pay, and then the owner can take it back, and the auction ends. So when you get a notice as a tenant who owns a storage locker, you have 30 days. It's already up for auction. People already are bidding on it. And you both have until that clock runs out to decide if they're going to keep it or it's actually going to sell on auction.
Gotcha.
So I took it as, you know, that counter included all the way up until the minute of the auction itself.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, okay, so anyways, I paused it, and I found this really funny. One of the other articles on the page... It was about the grocery store apologizing that there was a chip shortage during the storm. Remember we got that thing last week about how that's their local thing here is you got to have storm chips.
All right, that's cute.
It was cute. Yeah. Nothing else on the page seemed to have any relevance, but I picked up on that. It's like those little details, you know?
Yeah.
Like how many people are stopping and pausing this? I don't know, but I did, and I found it amusing.
I mean, this day and age, there are definitely more than a few people who do stuff like that. So.
Sure, but this isn't that kind of show where everybody's like scrutinizing for details, like from.
Right, yes.
If now newspaper articles in from, every word of it is being read and scrutinized.
What do they mean by the word "the"? Anyway.
So yeah. Go Sydney.
Yeah.
Sydney, I think, really, she did a great job this episode. I'm proud of Sydney. Made up with Rob. They got their things all straightened out.
Yes.
She got somewhere with Rafe, even though she's second guessing it. I was happy about that because, I mean, even if, you know, they don't end up together, like, they need to address it, you know, and not just ignore it, which is what they were doing. But no, Sydney, don't go to New York. This is where you want to be.
Right.
I know she wants to be here. She wants to be with her family. She wants to be with Rafe. If you want to model, I'm sure there's modeling in Nova Scotia somewhere.
I'm sure there is.
You don't have to be in New York to, you know, have a career.
I mean, the show is called Sullivan's Crossing, not Sydney in New York or Maggie in Boston.
Yeah, right?
So this is where they're supposed to be.
Let's stay in Timberlake.
Yeah,
let's deal with it there. And you can all work there. There's modeling and there's hospitals and you can all have careers right here.
Yeah,
amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, while running the campground and then the diner and the search and rescue and all of the other things too.
Right, yeah.
Where they need you.
Yeah.
Because Nova Scotians wear many hats.
Yes. From the actors on down, apparently.
Which we know is true.
Yes, we do. All right.
Wow, I've done this whole episode without opening my water. That's amazing.
That is pretty impressive.
It is, yeah.
All right, so do we have anything else to say about this episode before concluding?
I already talked about that, the whole baby thing. Cal, yeah, I'm really expecting it to be that he can't have kids. And I'm kind of hoping that's what it is. I don't want them to be like, yeah, no, I really dislike kids. Sorry.
If the only other thing I can think of is that maybe because of his dad, he thinks that he would not be a good father.
Maybe.
Because of that situation.
Maybe. The other thing I was thinking is maybe something about Lynn.
Yeah,
right?
okay. Yeah.
Where he was like, I wanted kids with her, and then she died, and I decided I'm not having kids.
Right.
But, maybe that's something he could change his mind about.
Right.
But also, it wouldn't be his kid. It's just, would you want to date someone who has a kid? It's a little different. Like, they're not talking marriage.
Right.
We're very, very early here.
Yes. So, I mean, that's the question, and you have to ask it.
Sure, but also, like, I'm sure he's thinking, like, why the frick is she asking me if I want kids on a first date?
That is a definite no on a generally when you have a first date is I want to have your kids like right off the bat.
Exactly.
But yeah.
I'm sure he's like, what just happened?
Right, yeah. So he's pretty confused. They need to talk.
They need to talk.
I guess, in the words of Lindora, if they had done so in this episode, there would be no drama.
There'd be no drama. And there was drama.
Yes.
So the meteorologist and the volunteer were the only new people we had in this episode. Otherwise, we had our basic main cast. One credit, but it's not IMDb's fault. There's actually a credit in the episode itself. So IMDb was correct based on the episode credits. So okay. IMDb is good job.
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row, good job IMDb. But the episode itself has this credit, which IMDb followed suit, but that's because it's in the episode credit. They credited that we saw Alyssa in this episode, Connie's new possible love interest.
Oh, yes.
And she was not in this episode.
No.
But in the episode itself, she's credited. So yeah, I don't know, maybe because she was in the last episode?
Uh-huh.
Like, did they produce this as a 2-part episode, maybe?
I mean, possibly. That's maybe it was produced as one episode,
right.
And then I don't know.
I don't know either. But yeah, the credits were, for the most part, pretty on point.
All right, so do we have anything else to say?
That's all I've got.
All right, if you, Stacie, we would like to hear from you. If you like this podcast, if you like this episode, so on and so forth. Stacie, we reached at.
I reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.